And we are live. Welcome to the very first open source Web3 design. This is number one. My name is Mitch Kozowski. Happy to have everyone here. The main idea behind this is to kind of where we are in the space, where blockchain is, people often say like Internet 94. So there's a lot of duplication of efforts in figuring out design. There's a lot of pain points in the design process. So this call, as well as a Telegram channel, are designed to facilitate communication across projects in the space. And so if you're interested in joining
Hey.
Hello, Bell.
Hey, Mitch, finally.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So if you're interested in joining that Telegram channel, please ping me on Twitter. It's at Mitch, M-I-T-C-H _ Kozowski, K-O-S-O-W-S-K-I, and we'll add you to that Telegram channel. Cool. So Beltran, you want to start with like a quick 30-second intro?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Beltran. I'm half Spanish, half Italian. I'm half designer, half developer, or full designer and a bit more developer. And I had a creative agency. I have an art foundation. I've collaborated to solve part of the DAO hack, very tiny thing. And from there, I was informed about the need for more design. So I mentioned it only because of that. And in March, I published the Web3 design principles, a very long opinionated post about what we would need to do in the space, mainly to bring more transparency to the top level layer. And right now we are collaborating with Akil, that is not here maybe yet, and Alejandro, who is here, to create a Web3 design system that has two parts, guidelines like the principles, and maybe a library for developers to quickly implement the Web3 design principles. And in general, I want to bring more designers to the space. So if you are starting, you have many ideas, many questions, come on to Telegram and we can help you.
Cool. Who's next?
I can be next.
Let's go.
So, yeah, well, my name is Alejandro. I am a product designer and computer scientist. I've been doing a little bit of both for the last few years, but more focused on product. And I really got into the blockchain space not so long ago. My first few contracts, I've been freelancing for a bit and like just roaming the world, having like digital nomad lifestyle. And my first contract with a fully, like blockchain Ethereum project was with Zeppelin early this year. Great team, love them. And I just became very, very interested in the space but the potential of decentralized technologies, especially because my home country of Venezuela is going through some really hard stuff, and I think we can help out using these technologies. So I'm really excited about all this. And yeah, I just wanted to bring more people into the design space because I think it's lacking. UX research, product designers. We want to welcome everybody that works in normal tech to take it to the next level and come and work in crypto.
Awesome. Cool. Amy, how about a quick intro as well?
Great. I'm Amy, and so I'm one of the co-founders of Raw House, which it's for emerging creatives in design technology. What we do is we kind of introduce what's happening in the creative tech industry, and then advise, like share opportunities and kind of show what's happening across the board. So through this community, we kind of had one event back in October. I was telling Beltran about designing for blockchain, and one of the things was we had a lot of interested designers, both senior level and junior level, but they couldn't get past some of the technicalities. And so we kind of were like, okay, we understand. I couldn't find any designers at that point who were also in New York City. So let's wait a little bit. And in February, I went to ETH Denver to hack. And it was really fun. And it was one of the best experiences. Yeah, Alejandro knows. It was like amazing. And I think coming in as a designer, I really understood, okay, how do you work with devs and how do you work in a community that is like trying to push out these like protocols, ideas, and how to make that happen from big idea to actually deploy. And so I kind of came out of it going like, I understand. I think Lane, who is from Crypto NYC, was like, we need designers in the space. And I was like, great, but I didn't understand how. So through the ETH Denver, I really understood how we can get involved. And so from then on, from February, my goal was like, how can we onboard more designers into the space? Let's do a design series that's specifically on design and blockchain. And so in May, we did 3. We did the one that everyone is famously commenting on was just with Connie and Sarah during NYC Blockchain Week here in New York City. We've done with Johnny Howell. We've done some with Token Foundry and the Art Decentralized community. And so we kind of just realized how to create this onboarding process for designers, which is like, how do you introduce a topic? How do you get them excited about something that's vertically aligned to what they're interested in? And then get them to actually be involved in some of the small projects and then get deeper into like possibly onboarding into full-time as a company. So that's also something that I can provide. We had about 200 across all 3 events. So we've been talking about a hackathon specifically for design and what does that look like. So Beltran and I were just also having that conversation. So happy to provide some insights there.
Cool, very cool. Saya, you're up.
Cool. Oh, let me turn on my video. There you go. Hi, I'm Saya. And so my background actually originally is in education and design. So I've been doing that for a long time. And that's actually what led me into blockchain. Because I heard a lot of people around me starting to talk about it. And like, I had been, I had been friends in college who were following Bitcoin and all of that, but I never really got into it. And then the more I got into it, the more I understood what the potential could be, but just how the barrier to entry into it is so high. And so I started, designing infographics and communication around it. How do you lower that wall so that more people can engage with it? And especially totally resonate with what you said, Amy, about how do you get more designers in this space? Because it is, you do need to take a very human-centered approach towards building it. But it's led me to working with this company called Bitski now, where we're developing dApp developer tools to really improve the UX experience, both in onboarding, funding, just like how do you support the user and both the dev in the dApp development process. So it's been really exciting, and I'm just really excited to be here and hear what everyone else is talking about and join the conversation. So.
Cool, awesome. Well, last and certainly not least is Rick, if you want to have a quick intro.
Hey everyone, yeah, just working on a project called Balance. Still find Ethereum very difficult to use and trying to fix that. So yeah.
Sounds good. Short and to the point. And I'll just do a quick, as we hop into the agenda, I'll have a short and to the point thing. So I am the director of product for an initiative called ETH Prize, which currently has 2 bounties in flight of $250,000 each. For an open source block explorer, and that is being worked on by the POA network. Some very good news coming out with that hopefully quite soon. So it's basically an open source Etherscan. And there's also being worked on by the Truffle team with a lot of initial work done by Piper Merriam. There's an ETHPM Ethereum package manager. So we're currently talking to our stakeholders of people like the Ethereum Foundation, ECF, Toshi Coinbase, 0x. And we're kind of thinking about, okay, what are some nice bounties that could be very open source and could help lift the entire ecosystem across different levels, protocol level, and design is very interesting too, because as Rick so eloquently stated, the using Ethereum is quite painful at the moment for both developers and for end users. So we have some initiatives that hopefully we'll be able to make some announcements very soon that will have some really sharp focus to this. And as part of that, we wanted to have this excellent Telegram group of Web3Design where we could have this communication across projects. We could have this cross-pollination, as well as this live stream, so we can kind of reach out to the community at large and do things of that nature. And so how ETH Prize works is that we have, it's like curated bounties. So we usually provide some good support to not like the community at large, but we usually talk with one team after some initial talks, and they pass some interviews, and we give them the structure they need to kind of hit the ground running and deliver something that really can improve the ecosystem at large. So cool. That is a quick intro for ETH Prize. once again, I'll just do my contact information. I'm Mitch, M-I-T-C-H _ Kosowski, K-O-S-O-W-S-K-I. That's right. At Telegram as well as Twitter. Very, very happy to talk about anyone with pain points in the Ethereum ecosystem design or whatever. And with that, I'd like to pass it off to Alejandro, who had a really excellent article on UX audits for dApps, as well as some ideas on next steps.
Thanks, Mitch. All right, let's get to it. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to just. This is a very long article, and I mean, kind of apologize for that, but it's a very thorough audit that I wanted to do. So this was originally a design bounty that Status published in their GitHub. So they just like briefly gave a description for what they wanted, and I just like try to follow it to the letter. I just took 5 dApps that I already knew about or that were showing up on the Explorer when I was using Status in beta. And I decided to take just like 5 of them. I actually tried a bit more, but I thought these were the meatier ones, because the other ones, like there are a few that have very limited functionality and we're still very early. But I think the biggest bang for your buck were these 5. So let's introduce them very quickly. They were, let's see if we have like a list here or something. I think I have, all right, over here. So this shows up a little bit better because it has an index. All right. So there's Pipith. Pipith is a decentralized clone of Twitter. And technically, you could call it a microblogging site. And it's very interesting because it uses the blockchain to store tweets. Or like it uses the Ethereum blockchain to store the hashes to the tweets or to the peeps. And I thought that was very interesting. And like you can store things using IPFS. You can even store images, and then you just store the hash in the blockchain. Of course, it comes with a downside that every tweet or every peep that you write has to be paid for. So a huge pain point here is you need to pay for everything that you do. But something great that they do, and props to the creator, Bevan Barton, is that you're able to actually batch transactions. So you don't have to do the full 1 peep, 1 Ethereum transaction. But you can also actually do 15 transactions and then batch them all together, which centralizes things a bit, but it's perfectly acceptable, I would say, for a dApp that's just like playing around with the ability to have an uncensorable Twitter clone. So this is very interesting. There's CryptoKitties, which obviously we all know, or if you've been following the space since November at least, this is like a game that blew up. It's about collecting kitties and trading kitties online on like digital, like scarce tokens that are unique. So yeah, I have a bunch of comments here on them. I can go by it later. There's OpenSea, which is a marketplace that's open across all collectible platforms that let you buy and sell collectibles. So besides CryptoKitties, which is the most well-known, there are other kinds of collectibles like this is Ethereum, I think. Let's see if we can browse OpenSea for a bit. Sometimes I forget that these dApps are also available on websites too. Because like I'm used to browsing them mostly on mobile. So, but you can actually obviously also do it on desktop, and if you use MetaMask, you can actually interact with them. Or you could download, I think there's the standalone browser for them. I think Elf, it's called. I tried it a few days ago. So yeah, you have like, World Cup collectible like cards and like CryptoKitties and animals. You can like trade all of these. And yeah, that was the 3rd dApp. The 4th one was AirSwap, and AirSwap is a marketplace for these, like it's a decentralized exchange for fungible tokens. So any ERC20 that trades or that like functions on top of Ethereum, you can trade here. Well, I don't know if they have liquidity for all of them. They certainly have a bunch, and they're pretty well known in the space. And yeah, so I assessed like the usability of that. If you want to like look at the comments there, it's there. Well, actually, I hadn't seen these in desktop. It's beautiful. On mobile, I know that they've done a great job, but it's, the screen real estate is so much lower that it's hard to browse around here. But this is great. Look at how they use all the logos and all the colors. I think it's fantastic. And last but not least, there's Bancor, which is a very well-known also trading platform. And as you'll notice, most of the dApps that I've gone to review or that are available right now are pretty much focused into trading and collectibles games and stuff like that. It's also economics, which makes sense, but we'd like to see more dApps like taking on more end user focused use cases, because not everyone's a trader. Not everyone comes to the space just to trade and to make money off of things and to flip kitties and stuff. So talking about the audit itself, we had I had like a bunch of guidelines. So like I did this kind of in a bootstrap way. I would like look at the onboarding process of each of these dApps and start collecting some like insights or some ideas for how like I could improve these. And these guidelines like started emerging kind of organically. So one of the things that I noticed is that it's important to be wallet agnostic. There are many wallets already, and I think we want to support all of them. So there's MetaMask, there's Trust, there's Toshi, there's Status, and there are already standards for signing messages and for interacting with the wallets that don't require MetaMask specific code. If you would log in to other dApps that are less well known, you would see sometimes that they reference MetaMask or that you can't actually enter if you don't have MetaMask specific code. That's a very, it's a very easy thing to fix. Toshi was like educating the people in the space to do this, and I think that's definitely a way that we should move towards. Use message signing for access. So like instead of locking people in to use like an account and a password and so on, let's leverage the fact that we have a wallet and we can have people interact with the dApp and persist their sessions just using the same key. Prioritize privacy. This is extremely important. I encourage all you guys to read this linked article here by Michael Senna. And it talks about how it's really, really not a good idea to put information on the blockchain that might later get analyzed, or that might be, even if you encrypt it, that might be decrypted in the future with like future technology and future algorithms. So we have to be very careful about what information gets linked to the blockchain, because we have to assume that blockchain analysis tools will evolve very quickly and they will be able to tell apart and to identify you uniquely. So you don't want the blockchain to be Twitter for your bank account, basically. You want some level of privacy, and as long as we don't have true privacy coins yet just functioning in the wild, we should be very careful about the information that we put there. Basic usability guidelines. If you're familiar with Norman and Nielsen, these guys, this is like a timeless article from, I think, 1995. You should just follow, every dApp is an app, and you should follow just basic guidelines for apps. And designing for mobile is something very important too, because most people, as you know, are not browsing on mobile devices. They all use mobile, or most people in the world use mobile, and this trend will just continue to evolve like this. We're not going back to desktop. I think the people that use desktop is very concentrated among the people who develop the technology and desktop workers, and it's not the majority. So this is important too. Educating people in the space is very important too. So include tidbits of information that are relevant or contextual. You don't want to be overwhelming the user with a lot of education that's not likely to be followed or likely to be dismissed. You want to be timely in your interventions. You want to tell people before you introduce a transaction, you want to tell people, hey, I'm going to do this. This is going to be the outcome. Kind of like when Facebook asks, or like some other application asks you for permission for notifications and so on. This is important to like set users' expectations and all that. You want to also communicate with a familiar currency. If you use the US dollar, that's fine for most cases. But if you can also set it to the user's native currency, that's even better, because no one understands Ether, and no one understands, especially the 3-line character that we've developed for Ether. That's something that is very niche, that is very specific to the space. You should maybe try to push it a little bit, but not assume that people will understand it. And Yeah, manage the user's attention to pending transactions is important too. We want to maybe develop a notification system or an asynchronous system so that people are aware that, because the blockchain takes so long, we can't expect people to be busy waiting on transactions at all times. We have to have a way to communicate to users, hey, just wait for a bit and I'll let you know when your transaction has cleared. And you have to know, like, obviously this depends heavily on what transaction, on what type of transaction you're executing. But for most transactions, you're going to want to have an async model where you tell a user, hey, this is ready, or just like PPIF does this very well. So they have like a status bar at the bottom where they load and then where they show the status of the blockchain. And sometimes when the network is quite fast, it hasn't happened in a few weeks, but when the network is fast, this works very well, because you just see it there, you see it like hovering for like 10 seconds, and then like it clears, and then like it stores it into IPFS, and like it sends it to the blockchain, and it kind of works. So it depends. Like you need to be aware of the state of the blockchain, and also aware of like how much time transactions will be taking. Mm-hmm. And all dApps need to have like central points of failure or central points of control, because it's not feasible to render, for example, CryptoKitties on a decentralized computer. That's not happening anytime soon. So we need to be strategic about how we centralize, and we need to do it in a way that doesn't compromise security. So yeah, long story short, you can read the whole article. It's quite thorough, and I would really, really appreciate your feedback. And if you disagree, I would love to hear how and why you disagree. And I am compiling all of these guidelines and trying to make like a resource center or of sorts that kind of takes it into consideration all of these learnings, and hopefully enables future developers and designers to design from scratch and from the ground up apps and especially decentralized applications that make sense and that follow best practices. So in that front, I was funded by Zeppelin to start this like small community of designers to like this called Design for Crypto. It's still quite small, and it's taking shape. We just like want to gather designers to start working on problems like these, like having like a set of guidelines and so on. And then we also have Discuss that comes with that network. If you want to go on for like long-term or long-form discussions, we already have like a good run here of threads that we are talking about and thinking about. So I think this is a great resource as well. So this is also by Akil and Beltran. We're all kind of working together to like set up this kind of community that's open and that's very like user focused. So we'll be really happy to get your feedback and like feel free to come here and start discussions. So
awesome.
And one question for you. Can I ask you one question?
Yes.
Besides the guidelines, which is good practice, did you notice also something bad that all dApps are doing bad today in the user experience?
Well, I gave them I kind of gave all of them bad marks in privacy, because it's not ideal. Like the status quo is not ideal at all for privacy. I think that we're going to find that all dApps that people are using now are going to be like the way people have been using them are going to be compromised, and a lot of us are going to be exposed into how we use these dApps. And I personally don't mind that much, because I don't have a lot of money invested in this. Like I'm just using it to play around. But if someone is, I think they should be concerned, because it's something that it's not something that you can't really design around. It's a core flaw or a core opportunity to improve that is embedded in the protocol and in the ecosystem as a whole. So that's something that we really need to pay more attention to. And I think Michael Sena describes it pretty well in that blog post. So be careful about storing on-chain things. We like prefer to do things off-chain if it makes sense to do them off-chain. I know like the temptation to decentralize is great, and there are many things that make sense to have decentralized, but be mindful that this is a public ledger. Everyone can read it, and everyone will probably be able to decrypt it at some point.
Cool. I'd be interested too if you could pull up the article again quickly. One question that I had, and everyone, please feel free to ask questions for a few minutes before Beltran will be up next on the agenda. Was that you kind of had the scorecard down there? I would be very interested in looking at the terrifying highs, so people that have really figured it out, and like some things that you really liked, and also the dizzying lows as well. Something in addition to the privacy that everyone really needs to get a handle on for now.
Yeah. Oh, I lost it. Where is it? I think I had. Oh, maybe I didn't have it here, but I had it here. The scorecard that showed everything is here. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make this like the center of the discussion here, because it feels like it's, to be honest, it's somewhat arbitrary. Like this is not like a scorecard that you could do like a report card that you would like at a school or something. I think this is something that, you know, like it gives like a proxy for determining how well they're doing in certain different areas, but it's by no means comprehensive. It needs more work, and it needs more input from other designers. But yeah, look, like you can see, like I just mentioned, like I didn't give good marks to most of them in the privacy realm. I think the only one that I gave good marks was AirSwap, because they're actually not using any data. Like they don't require you to link your account with any kind of personal information or anything. And you mean, if you're using the blockchain, let's face it, you're probably trading, and like you don't really care that much about being found out. So that's why like I kind of arbitrarily gave this like a top mark. But the others, you know, for example, PPIF uses your private information. Like you can actually link your PPIF to your Twitter account. So that might be a concern if you want to keep your blockchain addresses like private, right? I mean, in my case, and I think in many others cases, they want it won't matter, because like there's not a lot of money invested there. But if you like suddenly become a millionaire and you just don't want to be a target for this kind of thing, or if you just like to keep private, like there's many reasons why would you want to keep your things private. I think this is a key thing that we need to be focusing more on. I think all of them are like pretty good at doing the centralizing strategically part. I was really glad to see that. What else? I think, yeah, there's a lot of good marks here too. Like they're using the Web3 providers, or like the different wallets, like in an agnostic way. So like, for example, PPIF prioritizes the use of two because they're the most popular, and that's a perfectly valid design decision. They like decided to endorse MetaMask and Trust, just to like make it easier for people who had no idea what this thing is about to like get into one of these things. Yeah, I mean, I think that I was really happy to see like such a variety of dApps already up and running in a network that is still very early. I think in the future, I'd like to expand this review to 2 dApps that I've really enjoyed, or well, there is. I know the Bloom dApp has excellent product design and product vision. I have interacted with it in the past, and I am always surprised at like how thoughtful their design seems to be, and also their visual design is like stands out as well, which also makes me a little bit more biased towards them. I'd like to see, so Spank Chain is also very interesting. I haven't used it yet, but I told Amin on Twitter that I'd be reviewing it, and I mean, I think they're one of the people in the space who are doing the most thinking in terms of how we can make, for example, things like payment channels and these like cutting edge technologies more usable to people. And they had this idea of like turning payment channels into like a prepaid card model that people already understand. So things like that, I think are important to emphasize and to like see more of. And I think that I was gonna say, I would want to keep this going. I want to like make this research like part of my day like routine, or you know, like the part of the things that I think about every day, and that the space you think about every day. So for that, like beyond just using heuristic analysis, is what we're doing here. We have a lot more methods to our disposal. We can do user interviews. We could do think aloud, surveys, diary studies. We could analyze data quantitatively, and you know, focus on many different wallets, focus on many different, like the space is huge and we need all the help we can get. So if you're a UX researcher, UX designer, please get involved.
Cool, awesome. And unfortunately, I have an engineering background, so if you show numbers to me, it's just I can't help myself. But I saw 1 out of 10 for CryptoKitties and OpenSea for as far as the currency. And I think I remember reading that from the article. That was because they basically only presented Ethereum to the end user. They didn't translate to the currency. So that would be a big anti-pattern. I'd like to page the group. Is that people are in consensus there?
Yes, I would stand by that assessment. I think first, if Ether is so volatile, and second, people have no idea like how much it is, or even like if you only use the Ether sign, the three lines stacked on top of each other, people don't know what that is. Like I know it because I saw it on CryptoKitties for the first time when I was like entering the space in November, but you can't assume that most people know what that is. And like those, I would default to the US dollar if you really must, if you like want to make fewer questions in the onboarding process. But if not, like if you have the luxury of like the user's attention for a little bit longer, I would ask for what is the user's preferred currency.
Cool. I like to take a poll of the room. Is everyone basically in agreement with that? That for me, it seems to make a lot of sense.
An ETH rather than the symbol is better than the symbol for the beginners.
Cool.
I think.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Well, if that's it, any last questions for Alejandro? It's a super interesting article, and I'll post it in the tweet that we do when the live stream becomes a video. But any last questions for Alejandro?
Yeah, thanks.
Just one more note. On ETH as well. I think like for really new beginners as well, ETH itself, I've definitely had questions being like, what is ETH? Because people know Ethereum, but they assume that it's different. And so that's also another thing to like, how do you bring that piece of information in?
And please don't bring up gas, because then the whole world will explode. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, we might not be able to go down the gas rabbit hole, because I do want to make sure that we get to Beltran. But in the meantime, in the middle of that, Kevin Seagraves joined the call. And so Kevin, if you could have a quick 30-second introduction about who you are, and then we could hop to Beltran with some very interesting ideas on Web3 design.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Kevin. I'm actually a developer currently at BCG Digital Ventures, but I'll be shortly leaving to do some work with Gitcoin. And I'm actually doing a similar process as to what Mitch is doing, but in the security space. So I'm going to be running one of these bi-weekly calls. I've been doing interviews, stuff like that. So I'm kind of joining this at first as a dev. I'm interested in the user experience aspect of building, but also being involved in these phone calls and what that process is like. So I'm happy to be here.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. So Beltran, you're up. For a time constraint, about 10 minutes to the hour, I'm going to have to hop off to prep for my next call. Sorry to put you under the gun there, but let's hop right in.
I will be very fast. I'll do like Alejandro, but I'll be much faster because of that also, not because he was needed. So I wrote the Web3 design principles, kind of similar to the design audit. I don't want to tell you all about it because there's a convenient cheat sheet. I want only to start by telling you very quickly the principle, because it has a question for the community. So the basic idea is that we have this amazing technology, the blockchain, which is trustless, transparent, etc. But we overlay opaque and trustful front ends. And I had a discussion with Matt Condon the other day. He was saying that the dApps, distributed application, should look exactly as apps. And I disagree with this because we need to recognize when we land on a dApp that it's actually a dApp, because the value proposition is different. If there is a decentralized Twitter and there is Twitter, some users will want and buy into the decentralized values, even for any other type of business. So if there is the bank and there is decentralized bank balance, Rick, maybe you can tell us something about it. Maybe users will want to onboard balance instead of the bank. And so the value proposition is very important, and the user experience is very important, that we communicate that difference. And so the Web3 design principles are like 10 big guidelines around themes, okay? The big chunk of it is around transparency. So trust through transparency. The idea is that at the front-end layer, you should be able to know where the data comes from, where the data is going to, all the data that is pushed to the blockchain, if it's there and is accessible to a developer, it should be accessible somehow also to the front-end user. Maybe they want to know it, to have the history of all those transactions. And I advocate for a history, DApp-based history, and not rely on the wallets to keep track of your history. In the same way that you go on Amazon and you have your history of all your transactions with Amazon, whichever wallet or user identity or whatever you use to get into that dApp, you should be able to navigate to that history inside of the dApp. Especially in a future where we have thousands of these dApps, keeping track of these things and parsing inside of a wallet, I think the dApp needs to facilitate this for us. And of course, very importantly, transparency of code to know what blockchain is it running in a future where there's going to be plasma chains or other layer 2s, or maybe there's Cosmos or Polkadot. To know where these dApps are actually running is important. If there is code coming running on a server, etc. And there are some design questions around time management for the transaction, some things that I've seen in dApps being implemented, an idea about reading much nicer hashes formats. I forgot I am collaborating with the ENS service, Ethereum name service, to simplify all this process of reading and understanding hashes. There's a lot more to tell about the challenges we are having at ENS for implementing better user experience. And to answer, sorry, your previous name, so here, Saya, sorry, you were here. To Saya's question, I think that we need to have a permanent newbie mode where we build in our dApps 2 layers of education. One is we need to educate to the specific technicalities and lingo of the blockchain. And the other one is a layer that is dApp specific. So many of these dApps will have, because we are building the Internet of Things, will have something relating to finance or economics. We must not assume that the user knows all these words. They know what bonding means or staking, which is the same thing. And so we need to have a permanent newbie approach, especially in our time, where the majority of people will come from an outside world, not be blockchain educated. We need to educate them through our dApps. Also, like Alejandro was saying, being timely when to do it, and especially not to lose context when to do it. There is a section about gas price. I'm not going to get into it, and some other ideas in there. So the question for you around the Web3 design principles is, my belief is, let me stop share screening here. My belief is then that you need to have transparency also at the front-end level, okay? And my question then for all of you is, what do you think? Do you think the users need that transparency, or they won't care?
So I'll hop in, and then let's make sure that to have everyone chat as well, because I don't want to dominate. But my idea is kind of the consultant answer. So it depends. So if you look at what Loom is doing, and I really like that team, so definitely follow them. But they're doing something with called Zombie Battlegrounds, which is a Hearthstone clone using the ERC 721 standard, or the non-fungible token. So the main idea with that is that your cards are, non-fungible tokens. So you can keep those. It doesn't depend on the game. You can trade those outside. So on their onboarding, they explicitly state they don't want people to know that this is a blockchain game at the start. So it's not part of that value proposition. Now, when I think it comes to trading the cards, then it starts to become part of the value proposition. So to me, it's a little bit more shades of gray. When it's important, I think it's good to introduce it, but like as opposed to like having a big rubber stamp and saying blockchain, 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 which I'm not saying that's what you're saying. That may be a straw man, but that's something that I would caution against. How does the room feel?
Yeah, I just want to say that if you have a look and feel that even if you're able to establish this feels like a dApp, these feels like a decentralized application, what's stopping centralized applications from copying your look and feel and pretending they are trustworthy? I mean, it's something that we have to struggle, like we have to like think really through. I don't have an answer for it. I think that yes, we should. I mean, you know, Coinbase uses like the blue color because it like signals trust, and that I like that. You know, like, yes, I think it's worth it to spend some time and effort thinking about how to transmit trust in more subtle ways. But at the same time, I think this needs to be driven by the use and the use cases that are not possible now. The dApps will differentiate from apps insofar as they actually provide new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things that are not possible today.
Kind of go back to the conversation around like if blockchain as a technology is necessary for the application. And I think there's a lot of kind of like a lot of noise right now that's, hey, we need to add blockchain to this thing. And a lot of people, that's where people get confused. Like, why should I use Twitter versus, you know, PBIT? And so I think that there needs to be more clarity around your value as the dApp. And so once you understand, like, oh, if I want security and blockchain provides a level of security that a lot of like banks or normal kind of apps are not providing, then I can understand that it's a blockchain application. If it's, I think my concern is like over layering, where people kind of get lost, where you would see a website and there's a familiarity about, oh, this is a blockchain application, but then there is also the potential that someone might say, this is about blockchain. I don't know anything about blockchain. Why should I get involved in it? And then you lose them right away. So that's kind of going back to Mitch, what you were saying. Like, I think it depends, but you really should be focusing on what your value is that you're trying to provide and make that as clear as possible.
Absolutely, yeah. One team that I think everyone is very impressed with is Status. And so basically, like light node in your pocket, you know, you have decentralized communication. And I think that's this huge, great value proposition for blockchain, because when you look at these Arab Spring type of situations or revolutionary type of situations, what's the first thing that they go to do is the government goes to shut down the internet. They want to shut down the servers. And so Status hits you right from the get-go. There are no servers to shut down. That's because they, you know, they rat around it. That's their core part of the value proposition, and so that really resonates with me. Rick, from your angle with Balance, I think the blockchain is kind of a core part of your value prop. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about what dApp I would actually use for nearly 5 years, and the first one I came across was debt. I experienced abject poverty for 3 to 5 years, and I didn't realize how much it messed up my brain until I was not in debt. And when I fully understood Dharma's vision of what they're doing, it became clear to me that we can actually create a global marketplace for both the financing of debt and the terms, and the user interface by which people interact with it. And then more broadly, pretty much every single function of a bank just got recreated in a set of smart contracts in the last year. So right now, everything's incredibly hard to use. It's slow, it's clunky, no one cares. But I view it as a kind of inevitability that open source banking is coming, and we can massively undercut and massively improve upon every single function of a major bank. And the reason why that matters, you know, to me is I think it's the kind of thing that actually will get people to try crypto. You cannot get access to credit, and then suddenly you can. If you are subject to horrendous student loan terms, and then you don't have to be. If you experience the anxiety that I used to experience of not knowing if you're going to be able to make your bills that month, any improvement on that would be good. And of course, there are tons of companies going after that who develop on the USD protocol, and they spend huge amounts of sums just to get something out the door. And we're developing on open source software that can't be stopped. So that's what gets me excited. That's why I call it the dab for a joke, because dabbing is very popular among young people, and I think we need some kind of meme to get this to spread. And we're pushing this idea of a distributed autonomous bank that will at some point be infinitely better than any other centralized closed source bank run by some awful human being. So yeah, that's what we're focused on right now. And I think the most important thing from usability is a password reset protocol. If we don't do that, we might as well all stop working on what we're working on. So that will be, if no one else does it by the end of this year, then we hope to have some research there to share sooner rather than later.
I think a password reset protocol is, yeah, super duper important. And I think there's a few teams looking at that. Uport, I think, is one of them. I think Casa is one. The Shamir secret sharing is one of the common things, right, where you split it up into 5 pieces. Everyone remembers Harry Potter, right? It's the same idea with Voldemort and the thing. Cool. I would definitely like to have Saya's perspective on this question, as well as basically, what do you think, as far as a value proposition for dApps? What's the best way to present a blockchain, do you think, Saya?
Yeah, like going back to the idea of sometimes putting blockchain in the forefront, it ends up showcasing that the motive is, like, the purpose of this whole product or service is blockchain, and that's not necessarily the case. Like, blockchain, like the internet or whatever technology, is just a facilitator. It facilitates something else. And so understanding, when you understand the end user, why are they there in the first place? Like you were talking with Loom and Zombie, when you think about games, like, people go there to play. And so when they're in that behavioral, like, mindset, how do you, and they're not expecting to learn, and they're not expecting, like 10 steps to be able to play, how do you take those circumstances into condition and in perspective and say, okay, how do we design around that? So, like, one thing, for example, NFTs, it's interesting because when you talk about NFTs, one thing that's really cool is that true ownership. And so how do you emphasize that part, instead of saying like NFTs or, blockchain allows you to do XYZ, it's like, no, you really own this item. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of conversation around, attestation and all that stuff. Long rabbit hole. But yeah, I think just like understanding why people are there in the first place and what they want. And yeah, the language around that changes drastically depending on that. So I think that mindset is really important to take into account when you're like designing and thinking about even, yeah, like why blockchain in the first place? Because there's a lot of projects that it's like, well, how does this differ from what is already working now? And how much are users willing to compromise what already exists into like migrating into like this new system?
Yeah, it's one of the thoughts that I have is just, I'm just not terribly excited about a lot of projects that are like, Uber for blockchain or Airbnb for blockchain, because there's already an Uber that works, right? There's already an Airbnb. It's like, right. What can you do that's different?
Right, exactly. And I think with that too is that users, if they don't understand the problems around scalability and just like transaction speed, then they'll immediately say, oh, this is a bad product. This is a bad service. And I think that's pretty detrimental to any project when you're taking a new user who doesn't understand the depths of blockchain technology and assumes that you just are putting something that's bad versus like, oh, this could actually be, I don't know, life-changing.
Cool. Very interesting perspective. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to start prepping for getting on another call. I work in product, which means I don't actually do work. I just am on phone calls all day. But I would like to pass it off to Beltrans for some final thoughts on this topic, and as well if anyone else would want to hop in.
Yeah, so very, very good. We need to do more of these chatting between us and discussing these ideas. So it depends, very good insight. It depends on the type of product, the value proposition of the product, on what the user is doing there, what they want there. So it's a good choice. There are some dApps that will be focused only on dApps. ENS is only a dApp, and so it's at the forefront. And Balance as well. But probably, yes, if it's a game, CryptoKitties or whatever, you have the game aspect, and then you hide the blockchain as an enabler of a certain feature. Makes great sense. And I wanted to quickly introduce two things to think during the next 2 weeks so that we can then discuss better next week. One thing is Pedro is not here, unfortunately, but he's very interested also in, as we are, in educating new designers. We will need to discuss more, and we will probably post. There is a post on Conflux about what do we need to bring more designers. So if you were recently a designer, or you are a designer listening live to this, and you have questions, hop on CEO. Well, we'll put it on the comments on the page, conflux.network, and ask us questions so that we can prepare a courseware or some material for you. The second thing is about conferences. There is a movement for Web3 Summit, for DevCon, and unfortunately Akil is not here, but he will probably relate the same thing about ETH Berlin. These conferences want to have more design, and so one question for the next call is please start thinking about what you designers think is appropriate to bring to developer-centric conferences like like DevCon, and to more hackish or hackathon-like conferences like is going to be Web3 Summit. It's in Berlin at the end of October and in Prague at the beginning of November. So it's 1 week apart. And we can discuss this next time. I'm done.
Cool. Yeah, so I'll open the floor for any last thoughts, but not next week. This is a bi-weekly. So in 2 weeks at 2 p.m. EST, 11 a.m. PST, and 8 p.m. CEST, and all the different time zones. We will have our next call. I will be putting on the Telegram the doc to fill out the agenda. So if you are working on something very interesting, either a Medium article, some case studies that you like to share, or some of findings or general thoughts, please feel free to add yourself to that agenda. But I'll just open the floor. One last question. Any final thoughts for the floor? All right, excellent. Well, thanks very much. I think this is a very productive call. I'll be posting on Twitter a VOD if you want to share this with your colleagues or your parents if you want to say, hey, look what I did. But yeah, with that, my name is Mitch from ETH Prize, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, guys. It was wonderful to meet you.
Bye-bye.